This is Azarchives, where forgotten wars become stories. October 14th, 1943, it began like any other morning in East Anglia. But for nearly 300 young American airmen, it would end as one of the darkest days of the air war. The fields of eastern England trembled with a low mechanical thunder engines, warming props biting fog as ground crews tightened bolts, checked fuel lines, fed belts of .50 caliber into every gun of the flying fortress. B-17s of the United States 8th Air Force, the pride of American air power, stood ready. Another mission over Nazi Germany, another gamble. No one knew how many would fail to return. The target, Schweinfurt, a city of factories, a city of steel, ball bearings, small but vital. Tanks, aircraft, trucks, submarines, all of them turned because those bearings turned. Stop the bearings, stop the war. To American planners, Schweinfurt was the heart of German industry, a critical node. Destroy it, and you might shorten the war by months, maybe years. This was the second try. The first in August had been costly, yet promising. 60 bombers, lost production, reportedly cut nearly in half. The Germans recovered fast, machines repaired, lines dispersed. So the 8th Air Force would try again. To the young men climbing aboard, Schweinfurt was not a dot on a map. It was a whisper in the barracks, a name tied to death. Some had flown the first raid and never spoke of it again. Others were new, eager, nervous, knowing the life expectancy of a bomber crewman in 1943 was brutally short. 25 missions to go home. Few believed they would ever see that number. The bombers formed up over England, a moving grid of silver wings, catching pale sun. 10 men in each ship, pilot, co-pilot, navigator, bombardier, gunners in nose-tail, waist, top. Together they shaped the combat box, tight disciplined, meant to overlap arcs of fire. In theory, a wall of bullets to drive off fighters. In practice, a fragile shield that lived or died on numbers and nerve. Escort arrived for the first leg, P-47 Thunderbolts. Powerful, heavily armed, but short-legged. They could shepherd the bombers across the Channel and into the Low Countries, not to central Germany. Beyond Aachen, they would turn back. Everyone knew it. And when the P-47s reached their limit, they would tip wings in farewell, peel away, and the real test would begin. Below, farmers looked up, hundreds of engines vibrating the air, a promise that America was striking the heart of Hitler's Reich. For the crews, the sight comforted less. Empty bunks spoke louder than statistics. Eastward, the formation droned. Clouds broke. The autumn sun laid out the flat land below. Over the Channel, tension rose. Oxygen masks checked, guns loaded. Turrets swung for a last test. Flak vests tugged tight, thin hope against steel. Cigarettes burned fast in nervous hands. History would call it Black Thursday. By nightfall, wrecks on English fields, hospitals overflowing, and hundreds of telegrams beginning, "The Secretary of War regrets to inform you." The men did not know it yet, but the cost of this mission would reshape American strategy in Europe. It would test the faith in daylight bombing and prove that bombers could not survive deep inside enemy territory without long-range escort. For now, duty. Engines roared together. The great formation pressed forward, quiet fear in every chest and a heavy sense of responsibility. Somewhere in Germany, the target waited. Somewhere ahead, the Luftwaffe was already rising. The stage was set. The bombers of the 8th Air Force were flying into the jaws of the most powerful air defense system the world had yet known. When the United States entered the war, the sky was already a battlefield. Since 1940, the Royal Air Force had hammered Germany by night area, bombing born of necessity. Daylight brought losses too high, radar made defense too lethal. So the British turned to darkness. From Hamburg to Cologne, Dresden to Berlin, cities burned. Americans believed they could do better. Precision bombing by day, hit vital organs factories, rail lines, shipyards, cripple the war machine at its core. New bomb sites, tight formations, heavily armed bombers, accuracy not terror. It was bold and moral. Leaders from Hap Arnold to Ira Eker wanted daylight strikes to shorten the war, save Allied soldiers, and avoid civilian slaughter. The combined bomber offensive of 1943 set the rhythm. RAF by night, USAAF by day, a 24-hour hammer, no rest for the Reich. But the enemy was ready. The Luftwaffe battle-hardened, fast deadly Bf-109s and FW-190s in numbers. an integrated web of radar and anti-aircraft guns, Freya and Würzburg, tracking controllers, vectoring fighters, and flak, the dreaded Flugabwehrkanone, teenagers and veterans alike, manning 88s, 105s, 128s, blackbursts tearing aluminum and flesh, a million-man weapons system. Every crewman knew what waited past the channel. 10 machine guns felt small at 20,000 feet when the sky filled with German fighters. Casualty rates were brutal. 25 missions sounded less like a tour and more like 25 chances to die. Still, the Americans persisted. They had to. Air power was the only way to strike Germany until invasion was ready. The 8th Air Force carried that promise. By summer 1943, the results were mixed. Courage in the Ruhr and painful weaknesses, without long-range escort losses mounted. Dark jokes spread, but morale held. Every takeoff was an act of faith. Schweinfurt October was not an accident. It was the centerpiece of theory. Strike the bearings, and you slow every gear in the Reich. Bold, logical, terrifying. The promise of victory from the skies would meet its price. Long before the 14th, Schweinfurt was circled in red. Deep in Bavaria, along the main river, a modest city with the lifeblood of war ball bearings. Small rings of polished steel, indispensable. Engines, turrets, shafts, transmissions, all turned on them. Take them away, and the war jams. Kugelfischer, vast and sprawling. VKF twin plants. Together nearly half of German supply. A perfect target on paper. August 17th tested the theory. Regensburg and Schweinfurt struck in one day. 230 fortresses, sent 60 lost. Photos looked good. Reports said output down 40%. Precision bombing, it seemed, worked. But Speer moved fast. Machines salvaged, double shifts, production dispersed. Weeks later, output rebounded. By September, bearings flowed again. One raid would never be enough. So came the second mission. Larger, tighter, decisive, or so they hoped. Nearly 300 bombers to smash the factories and overwhelm the defense. For planners, a chance to finish the job. For the crews, the lion's den. There was optimism, even arrogance. The flying fortress could endure, they said. 10 guns, self-sealing tanks, tough as legend. Posters showed smiling crews. Veterans knew better. Cannon could shred any fortress. Flak could tear one apart in a heartbeat. Still, if you could cripple bearings, you might ground fighters, stall tanks, slow submarines. Worth the risk, if you lived. Whispers spread in the huts. Even before briefing, men guessed the target. Suicide City, some called it. Gallows humor on bulletin boards. Jokes about bringing home a German bearing as a souvenir. Under the jokes, dread. In the war rooms, maps unrolled. Channel Belgium deep into Germany. 800 miles out and back. Escort only part way. P-47s and P-38s lacked the legs. Past Aachen alone. A gamble born of theory and necessity. The P-51 was not ready. The war would not wait. If Schweinfurt could be crippled now, maybe the end would come sooner. Orders signed, target set, Schweinfurt again. Dawn, pale sun through mist over East Anglia. Dozens of fields came alive. Quick breakfasts, quiet men, coffee, cigarettes, forced laughs that died quickly. Everyone knew Schweinfurt. The briefing pointer tapped the map. Channel Belgium, Germany, Schweinfurt. Silence. The stakes laid out, bearings were essential. Destroy them, shorten the war. The truth, too long distance, strong defenses, limited escort. Out to the hard stands, rows of B-17s beaded with cold dew. Ground crews had worked all night. Bombs loaded, belts fed, oil fuel sweat in the air. 10 men to a ship, each role fixed, each life bound to the others. Engines coughed, then thundered, prop wash, kicked dust and grass. The Silver Armada rose. Combat box, overlapping arcs, mutual fire, a system born of necessity because there was no escort deep inside Germany. P-47s slid alongside 8 guns each, but only 200 miles of range. They would not make it to the target. Across the channel, oxygen on, guns ready. Flak vests tugged again. For some, a first deep mission. For others, one more step towards 25. All carried the same cold fear. Over Belgium, the escorts dipped their wings goodbye and gone. The sky felt suddenly empty, the horizon darker. Somewhere out there, the Luftwaffe waited. Point of no return, ahead Schweinfurt, and the fury of a nation determined to stop them. Even before the last fortress left the English coast, German radar had them. Tall masts swept the sky, blips crawled across scopes, orders flashed intercept. Squadrons scrambled from Holland to central Germany. Bf-109s and Fw-190s roared up sleek lethal built to kill heavy bombers. Their plan was a relay: attack, land, refuel, rearm, attack again, fresh waves for hours. The bombers had only what they carried: fuel, ammo, and resolve. The first strike came near Aachen right after the escorts turned back. High above, sun flashed on wings. Dozens of fighters dove head-on. Simple, devastating. Close fast from the front, the fortress's weakest angle, and pour in 20mm cannon fire. 200 miles an hour against nearly 500, closing in seconds. Nose gunners fired streams of tracers, but the Germans kept coming. Explosions rocked the formation. A cockpit shattered. A fortress spiraled down, 10 men gone in seconds. Another ship burned wing to wing, falling like a comet. Chaos, but the survivors held formation. Pilots fought the yoke. Gunners shouted through static and screams. The smell of cordite and burning fuel everywhere. Then another wave. Twin-engine Bf-110s and Me-410s. Heavier, slower, more firepower. Some with 37mm guns that punched through a fortress. Others with the dreaded 21cm rockets. Werfer Granite 21 fired from range, detonating with brutal force. The combat box worked only if it held. Rockets forced evasive moves. Ships swerved, the box unraveled. Isolated bombers became prey. Focke-Wulfs slashed down. Messerschmitts circled like hawks. A crippled fortress slid out of place. 3 fighters pounced, and it vanished in midair. Inside, the remaining ships, fear and fatigue set in. Guns had been firing since the border. Ammo ran low. Voices cracked, asking for more belts. Frost formed on oxygen masks. The cold bit to the bone. Still discipline. Damaged ships hugged their wingmen, wingtip to wingtip, refusing to drift alone into the killing ground. But every mile forward cost another bomber. Wherever you looked, Germans attacking, and B-17s smoking, burning, spinning down. A crewman would write that later. Hell in the open sky with no way out. By central Germany, nearly 30 fortresses gone. Hundreds of men dead, missing, captured. Survivors flew on holes in the wings, engines coughing. Smoke blood on the deck. Ahead, the target loomed: Kugelfischer 5KF with rings of flak waiting. The fighters thinned, ammunition low, fuel draining. The next act belonged to the guns on the ground. The initial point straight and level from here. No weaving, no dodging. Bombing demanded precision. The most terrifying minutes of any mission. A brief quiet. Then the thunder of flak. Black puffs bloomed. At altitude 88s, 105s, 128s, bursting where the fortresses flew. Shrapnel rattled like hail. Some hits were scratches, others cut fuel lines or men. Yet the formations held, bombardiers to the nose, the Norden alive under their hands. The pilot locked the ship to the sight. From here, the bombardier flew the plane. Steady, steady, bombs away. Bomb bays yawned open. Silver streams fell, long, slow arcs into the haze. 122 high-explosive bombs. 143 inside the factory areas. 88 direct hits. Rail yards, workshops, assembly halls. Warehouses struck in waves. Fireballs rolled up, smoke billowed. From the air, it looked like success. There was no time to celebrate. Flak followed the turn, black blossoms chasing the retreat. In one B-17, the bombardier slumped back, job done. The pilot took the controls, banking away. Behind the tail gunner, called out bursts and fighters. The mission was only half over. They had delivered. They had done their duty. But many wondered, would it matter? August had taught them how quickly Germany could repair, rebuild, relocate. Would this time be different? Questions could wait. Survival could not. Between Schweinfurt and England lay hours of hostile sky. Bomb bays empty. Ordeal not over. Flak hammered the retreat. Shrapnel hunted oxygen lines, fuel tanks, men. Then the fighters returned, refueled, rearmed, relentless. Bf-109s, Fw-190s, fresh pilots, hot guns. The Americans exhausted, low on ammo, formations torn. Attacks from every angle, slashing, dives from above, hammer blows from the sides. Stragglers suffered first, smoke trailing, speed falling, and the hunters swarmed. Gunners fought with what remained. Belts dwindled, barrels overheated. Some turrets fell silent, jammed, empty, or manned no more. Still the fortresses lumbered west, wings, ragged engines sputtering. Never had we seen so many Germans at one time, and never had their attacks seemed so well coordinated. Everywhere fighters stooping, B-17s, burning parachutes drifting, or none at all. The Channel was hours away. Each airfield launched fresh sorties. Each town added flak to the storm. The formation bled men and machines with every mile. Some endings were sudden a wing ablaze, a spiral, an explosion in a distant field. Some crews crash-landed and were captured within minutes. A few limped towards Switzerland, choosing interment over death. There was resilience too. Pilots coaxed crippled engines to keep turning. Gunners tended the wounded. Navigators plotted courses through smoke and haze. Fortresses lived up to their nameships. Missing chunks of tails still staggered home. The Channel at last tears in some eyes. Even then, danger. Some dropped on the first English grass they saw. Others collapsed on the runway engines, dying as wheels touched. The toll catastrophic. 291 bombers took off, 60 shot down, 17 more written off, over 120 scarred, more than 600 airmen killed, wounded, or missing nearly 1 in 5 who had climbed aboard that morning. Back in the barracks, heavy silence, empty bunks, mess halls counted the missing. Whole crews gone, a single friend gone, grief everywhere. Black Thursday was not a mission, it was a massacre. The 8th Air Force had delivered its bombs at a price that shook strategy to the core. Without escort fighters, deep daylight raids were suicide. By evening, it was clear something had changed. Wrecks on fields, hospitals overflowing, hundreds of bunks empty. A turning point. The theory of unescorted daylight bombing collapsed. The fortress was tough. Crews were brave, but against radar-guided fighters and dense flak bravery and armor were not enough. Over 20% of the men who flew that day were lost. No force can pay that bill for long. Worse, the effect was brief. Photos showed damage, fires burned, but analysis in the weeks after found production dropped only about 10%. Spear dispersed lines, tapped reserves, patched machines. Within months, bearings recovered. Publicly, victory. Headlines praise for courage and bold claims. Privately, deep concern. Morale shook. Men stared at empty chairs. The odds of reaching 25 felt cruelly small. Even the toughest crews wondered if they were being sent to die. For the rest of 1943, deep penetrations paused. Targets shifted to France, the Low Countries, the Ruhr, where escorts could reach. Change arrived in 1944, the P-51 Mustang. Sleek, fast, long-ranged. With drop tanks, it could ride with the fortresses to Berlin and back. Under its wings, the balance shifted. The Luftwaffe bled pilots and planes. By spring, German defenses cracked. Black Thursday rewrote the doctrine, from faith in self-defending bombers to absolute reliance on fighter escort. Tactics refined, combat boxes now under a swarm of Mustangs. Daylight precision survived because Black Thursday proved the price without support. For the men who flew, the memories never faded. Endless fighter waves, rockets breaking formations, fortresses spinning down in fire, visible scars, missing limbs, burns, invisible ones, names and faces that never came home. In the grand arc, Black Thursday did not cripple German industry nor end the war early, but it taught the United States what victory in the air would cost. It forced innovation, drove adoption of new aircraft, new tactics, exposed the price of miscalculation. Some battles are remembered for victory, this one for its lessons. Out of smoke and fire, America forged a new way of war bombers and fighters together, strategy and sacrifice, a force that by 1945 would dominate the European sky. For families who received telegrams that October lessons brought little comfort. For survivors, memories lingered. For historians, Black Thursday remains a sober warning: air power is powerful, but never invincible. October 14, 1943, nearly 300 bombers rose. 60 never came home. 600 men were lost. The 8th Air Force struck hard and paid unbearably. 2 words would carry the weight ever after Black Thursday. Subscribe to azarchives and keep history alive.